Alright, so the next few videos I'm going to be talking about sort of drum setup, how you set up your kit, where you put things, how high or how low or how tilted or angled you put things. All this stuff is important because you have to deal with this thing. And to have stuff in the right place that works for your body and for your motion is super important. We don't see this in other instruments as much. Piano, like the keys are always in the same place. Guitar, the strings and the length of the neck and the size of the frets, and there can be subtle differences, but it's really damn close. Drum set, everyone sets it up a little differently. And it depends, like I said, on kind of your body. Are you tall? Are you short? Like, what's the deal? And how you move and what type of music you're playing. So, I want to do this first video and talk about seat or throne height and snare drum height. This is the foundation, right? This stuff is critical to where everything else is going to go. You start with the throne and you start with your snare in terms of height. So some guys like to sit really, really high like that, and some guys will sit very low so that their legs, their knees are up like this. I think the best position is somewhere in the middle, and those two extremes of being really high or really low can cause issues in your posture and potential back problems down the road. So it's important to find, like, where do you like your height to be. So one thing we can look at is if I put my feet on the pedals and if I sit the way I would sit if I'm playing the kit, we can see that my legs have this slight downward slope. And I don't know what the angle is, but you can see in the video here, they have this slight downward angle. If I were sitting too low, in my opinion, you'd see them almost parallel to the floor, right? Or maybe even coming up higher, which creates sort of a weird pivot point in your hip. We're not working with gravity at that point in the best way possible, so a little downward slope is what we're looking for. And in comparison, not too much downward slope. Like if I was sitting too high, we would have this really steep angle here. So yeah, this is somewhere in the middle. Yeah, slight downward slope in the legs. That's what we're going for. Now, let me give you the measurement on this seat height. So I got tape here. So from the floor to the top of the cushion is like 21.5 inches. And for me, I'm feeling like that's a pretty good height. I don't measure that. I usually just go by feel, or like if I'm using a different throne, I'll actually measure it against my existing throne, so I make sure they're the same height. I am 5'6" and a quarter. I'm kind of a short dude, so obviously if you're taller than me, you'd probably want that a little higher. If you're shorter than me, you'd probably want that a little lower. But for me, that feels pretty good. Actually, I would say that maybe this is probably right in the middle. I could go a pinch higher with it and maybe a tiny bit lower, but if anything, I'd probably go a little bit higher now that I'm sitting at it. So there you go. That's the basics on throne height. Now, why do I include snare drum height in this video? It's because it's directly related to your throne height, and most importantly when it comes to playing rim shots. So, as you know, or maybe you don't know, in a lot of pop or rock styles of music, when we're playing those 2 and 4 backbeats, a lot of times we're going to be playing those as a rim shot. which if you don't know, that's when you hit the rim and the drum head at the same time and you get that crack. Now, it's kind of a fine line that we're straddling there in order to find where that rim shot is. And if the seat height is not in its ideal place, or the snare height is not related to that, we're going to have issues. If it's too low, we're going to be hitting the head most of the time. If it's too high, we're just going to get the rim most of the time. So the snare height, once you have your throne height, is crucial. So one way to test this, again, this isn't something I measure, but my hand knows where it likes to sit when it plays rim shots. Like a lot of drummers, I almost come down to my leg. Maybe not entirely. It's not like a crutch that I'm leaning on. I'm not necessarily resting there, but it's sort of a marker for me in order to be able to hit that rim shot every time. And one way to test for this is to, just play a basic backbeat groove, mid-tempo thing. Play eighth notes on your ride, but also play eighth notes in the left foot so that your leg is bouncing up and down. And that will tell you if your leg is going to get in the way of your rim shot and whether or not the snare should be a little higher or a little lower. So something like this, 2, 3, Alright, so this is obviously at the right height because I set this kit up a little while ago and made sure it was all good to go. But if it wasn't, having that leg playing eighths in that example would certainly tell me if I need to come up or down on the snare drum. Okay? So another thing I think I should include right now in this video is the distance between your throne and the snare drum. So this comes down to like what feels good with your feet on the pedals. Because if you're too far away, you might have a weird angle down in your shins. It's like your shins end up being too far extended like that if you're too far away, which can be weird on the pedals. Or vice versa, you're too close to the snare, and then you have this this kind of angle going on, and it feels like you get shin splints when you're playing the drums. So it's important to experiment with what that is like. Again, I don't really measure these things, I just go by feel. And I should also point out that if you look at how I'm sitting on this seat, I'm sort of right in the middle of this cushion. I'm not sitting back on it, which impedes motion in my thighs. And I'm not sitting so forward. I'm not sitting so forward on it that I'm like having balance issues and falling into the drum set. So you first establish where you want to be on that cushion, and then think about, okay, should I be a little further back or a little further forward? Really small amounts here make a big difference. Like a ½ inch can be a pretty big difference. So it doesn't take much. Alright, so that's it for this video. Throne height, snare height, and sort of overall distance from the kit with your throne. Things to think about, things to experiment with, and take some time to dive into this a little bit with your drums at home and see what feels good to you. And the more you play and the more years you have under your belt, you'll just kind of feel where that is all the time, and you'll just know automatically what adjustments you need to make. Okay, cool. See you next time.